Welcome to the Z Cray stream for this day, 11th of June 2017. Or it could be another day, depending on where you're watching in the world. And why are we here? Well, we're talking E3, and as you can see from the background, we're talking EA, Electronic Arts, who are getting in a bit early. It's not quite E3 time yet, really. E3 doesn't start for about another 24 hours. But EA have snuck in with their own conference early on, at which they call EA Play, which is part of their whole EA Play sort of event, if you will, which is a bit separate to E3, which seems to be a bit of a trend with developers and publishers these days. Is they're participating as part of E3, but also kind of not. They're trying to control their own thing. You know, Nintendo do their Nintendo Direct thing. EA have their EA Play. Devolver have their little indie thing across the road and stuff. So things are evolving with E3, and this year, for the first time, they're actually allowing fans to come into the conference as well, the expo. So that's definitely something new. But today, we will be talking about all the announcements that Electronic Arts have made today at their conference. Now, it did catch me a bit off guard. I have got this massive schedule, which if you look on my profile, the Zcraze profile, you'll see the times I'm aiming to stream after all the conferences to wrap up my thoughts on the various announcements. But yeah, this one actually seemed to be, I don't know if they changed the times on it, because it was overall a 4-hour stream. But it did seem to start a little bit earlier than I expected. But I have caught up, and now let's start talking about it. So one thing that wasn't EA related that has just been announced is that Xbox have announced a drop of $50 to the Xbox One S, and that's obviously in preparation for the Scorpio being announced tomorrow. Well, not announced, but actually revealed in that. So whether or not that's a temporary price cut or not, we don't know yet. But clearly, obviously, it's going to have to be cheaper. And if you want a cheap 4K Blu-ray player without paying Scorpio prices, that could be a good way to get it. I mean, it's already a cheap 4K Blu-ray player, so even if you're not that interested in Microsoft games, but you want a 4K Blu-ray player, Xbox One S could be worth your time. But you'd obviously want to find out whether you want a Scorpio first, of course. So that was not EA related, but the rest of what we're talking about for this stream will be EA related. Now, overall, the conference I felt was a little bit less awkward than last year's one. They had a lot of awkward moments from memory at the last EA conference last year, E3. There seemed to be this focus on YouTube creators and Twitch streamers and the players themselves. Like EA are really trying to reach out to the players, the people themselves. They called the players that they were bringing in to kind of beta test their games, game changers and things like that. For some reason, I wasn't invited, but hey, I guess everyone can make mistakes. But yeah, it was quite interesting to see him. I think EA are trying to make themselves more human. There was those batch of years where EA were kind of being voted as the most hated company in the world, which is pretty crazy thinking about all the different corporations that are out there that could be classed as a bit more evil than EA. I mean, yes, EA has had a checkered past on how they've treated their players in the past. Yeah, but they're not exactly, blowing up countries or anything like that, they're not doing anything purely evil, you don't have to participate in their games if you don't want to. So I feel like it seems to be a bit of a culture change with EA, and they're really trying to put the focus on the player themselves and the creators and that. And whether that's going to pay off for them, I don't know. I mean, people might be able to see through the PR and be able to know that, okay, well, this is maybe just PR, or maybe it's genuine. Maybe the corporate side of EA is finally starting to wake up and saying, wait a minute, we actually have to listen to the players. We can't just make games and, base it around stereotypes and other things, marketing decisions and that sort of thing. Maybe Mass Effect Andromeda just recently maybe really taught them a lesson. That they've got to really listen to the audience. Otherwise, there's plenty of other players out there now. This industry now is bigger than Hollywood. So, but you can't ignore your audience. So that was an interesting take. It meant for some genuine moments, but also had some awkward moments. Yeah, it was there. One of those moments which you could call awkward or not was at the end of the stream. There was actually a marriage proposal. That was, I guess, unexpected. Um, she said yes, so I guess that's a good thing. But I think people found that kind of awkward to an extent. But that always happens with these public sort of proposals, doesn't it? Now, another bit of news for EA is they've announced that they're going to be allowing free access to Origin Access for a week, and also the Xbox version of that. I can never remember the name of that. So yeah, if you want to try out that service, you can try it out for free for this following week. Um, it's a back catalog of old titles, really. So I don't know how exciting that was. The only time I was actually interested in Origin Access was when they were giving like a week early access to Mass Effect Andromeda. Which I felt was actually kind of insulting to players in a way. Like, if you were a real fan of Mass Effect, to think you might have actually pre-ordered the game. I think I did. And then other people that happen to have a subscription that might not have been that passionate about Mass Effect got to play 10 hours of it earlier than, like, people that are really into Mass Effect. So I was left in that position as well myself. Was like, oh, do I pay another $7 on top of my pre-order already to just so I can play it for 10 hours early? And I decided against it because I didn't want to reward that practice. And I felt like that was a bit of a kick in the face to true Mass Effect fans, trying to charge them for early access. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know if that's going to really win people over, given 1 week free access. But hey, if there's been some games you've been meaning to try out that are on the sort of catalog for EA access, Origin Access, then I guess this is your chance for next week. And at least it's not like a 24-hour, 48-hour thing where if you've got slow internet, it will take you that long to download half of the games before even getting a chance to really try them out. So yeah, if you're looking for that, that's a thing. But let's get into the announcements of EA Play for E3 2017, or pre-E3 2017. Now, first up, we had Madden NFL 2018. Madden has taken some tips from FIFA's move last year, and they've introduced an RPG mode, much like FIFA 17 had, and it's called Long Shot. To get the long shot. This seems like it's going to be an ongoing feature, possibly for EA Games for the time being, I think. I don't know how long they can stretch that out for. How long can you, keep making the whole journey from rags to riches kind of seem exciting? Like, oh, he wasn't a player, now he's a player. I don't know how long that's going to last for. Yeah, I think they'll experiment with this mode for a few years and then they'll find some new gimmick. But I don't want to call it a gimmick because I think it's good that they actually bring in story to sports games because, with all sports ball games, it gets, it's just, a roster refresh each year, some slight improvements in animations and graphics and that, and, a couple of new features just to make it seem like it actually is a new game. And I'm sure those people that do buy it yearly do notice the differences. There's, refinements, it's constant perfection, I guess, but having to pay for a full price of it each year instead of like maybe just a subscription or a DLC upgrade for each year to upgrade the roster. Yeah, I think the idea of bringing these story modes, these RPG modes to sports games, I think, it's an interesting formula. And I think... hopefully we'll see if that's actually long term, if it's going to get repetitive over time, how can they keep making that interesting? Okay, they've introduced it into Madden this year, and so that will seem fresh for NFL players, but how can they keep making that interesting each time? Maybe just with different characters. I don't know. But yeah, so expect the same sort of deal, I guess, as the mode that was in FIFA, where you're doing a career mode. That's basically what it is. Like, but I guess a bit more cinematic. With some story and some heartache and passion and all that jazz. Um, so yeah, if you're an NFL fan, which I do question the appeal outside of America, but I know there is NFL fans around the world. Then I guess that's the big news for Madden 18. Um, Now moving on to the next game that was talked about at EA Play, and that was Battlefield 1. Now, Battlefield 1 has obviously done very well. It bet COD in space, as people call it, or Infinite Warfare. Last year it was, wasn't it? Yeah. Which was surprising. I must admit, when Battlefield 1 was announced, I thought, oh, this seems a bit, oh, no offense, boring in a way. Like, I guess with COD, they tried to go for a real exciting sort of Hollywood thing, with going into space and stuff like that. While Battlefield seemed to take the opposite step and come back and become more of a serious thing, historical thing. Not to say that hasn't been the case before, but it was quite two different directions, and in the end, Battlefield 1 ended up being the one that paid off for people that were into the game. And yeah, COD in space didn't go down so well. I think that the effect of that has been shown, because the next Call of Duty is actually going back in history now. I don't know. It's not to World War One. I can't remember what it's based on. Is it the Vietnam War? I'm not sure. But either ways, you can tell that Call of Duty team said, okay, the COD in space thing didn't work for us. We're gonna have to copy Battlefield now and go back. Now I'm disappointed. I must admit, like, I don't get into Battlefield or COD, and I must admit, COD in space actually interests me because I like future games. I like space games. So if I was ever going to probably play a COD, that was probably going to be the first one I'd ever play. So I might pick that up one day for $5 or something like that. But I'm not racing to get it with all the other games that I could be playing. But anyway, Battlefield 1, there's a new DLC coming out. It's called In the Name of Tassar, and I hope I pronounced that right. It's based on nighttime maps. There's going to be new nighttime maps, and involves the Russian army. It has 6 new maps all up, and vehicles and new weapons, and it's got a September release date for that DLC. I did seem to mention, I think, something about maybe some Twitch streamers showing it off early. I mean, we did see plenty of demonstrations during EA Play, but yeah, quite a lot, like live multiplayer demos and so forth. But I think I heard him mentioning something like, as if like there's going to be some Twitch streamers from the Battlefield community that are going to be showing like early footage, or playing it early before the actual full game comes out. So that's an interesting technique. I wonder if that's how things are going to go forward. Like, instead of actually necessarily releasing a demo or an alpha or beta to players, this way people can get maybe hyped up from watching Twitch streamers and that play the game before it actually comes out. But then will it also dampen the hype? Will it actually build the hype? Go, oh yeah, I really want to play this. Or will, by the time it comes out, if they do that, come September, 2 or 3 months later, will people be like, oh, well, I've seen it all now and I'm not that interested? I mean, for something like Battlefield, like, it's a multiplayer game, so I think you can get away with it. It's not like it's a straight narrative game, so you won't necessarily get bored of it. If you are hearing different sounds right now in the background, that's my dog Nitro, which you see on the Z Craze promo, rolling around, making noises. Right when I started streaming, he's been just sleeping there previously, and now he's kind of shaking and all sorts of other things. But anyway, back on point. Yeah, it's going to be interesting if that is what they're doing, if that's going to pay off for them. Hey EA, if you want to send me a code, I'll play it. I'll give it a go. I'll do a stream of it. But I will say I haven't actually played Battlefield 1, and I don't know how good I'd be at it. But I must admit, it looks good. I like the chunky tanks and all that sort of stuff. And one bit of footage they showed us of the live multiplayer demo they were doing, they had one person going down in trenches with with a tank, and people going, oh well, this isn't going to work out well for him, but it actually ended up working well for it. So it shows there's that, would you call it emergent gameplay? There's ways to take it to places that you don't expect, as with most multiplayer games. So that's Battlefield 1. There's new DLC coming. No doubt it's paid. So how much that's going to be, who knows? But we'll see. Next up, back to sports ball, and we did mention FIFA 18 before. So next up, they showed some FIFA 18. They're continuing the story mode. So the journey was called last year. This year it's called The Journey Hunter Returns. So, this is what I was kind of talking about a bit earlier on, which was, I think they can get away with it for 2 or 3 years. Hunter Returns, the focus seems to be like, oh, is he going to get traded or something to another team? Or, that seems to be the case. Like, he's going to a new team now, really trying to play it up. They had all these people coming up, go, oh, Hunter, he's the best person in the game, like right now everyone's talking about Alex Hunter. So they're really trying to play it up. So I think that'll work for FIFA 18. Will it work for FIFA 19? Will it work for FIFA 20? Will they need a new character to do the same sort of storyline, but just a different character? So I don't know how long this novelty, if you will last, but I don't want to call it a novelty, because it's a cool concept, and it's cool that they're probably taking away some of that Bioware technology for, decision making and that, and putting it into a sports game. Now the other big news, they've used data from Ronaldo for the motion capture and that, so I guess that improves things. I'm not really a soccer/football person myself, so it's hard for me to comment too much on it, but obviously Ronaldo is known as a very famous player, even for people who are not into that sort of sports ball themselves. So I'm sure that is good news for players. But how much of an impact that actually makes on the gameplay or not, I don't know. We'll have to see. Of course, animations and that always improve from year to year with these sports games, so that's to be expected. Moving away from sports ball, we had Need for Speed Payback now. As I mentioned in my predictions in my last stream, Need for Speed Payback had already been kind of announced. I think it might have been leaked first and then announced, like last week. And with these leaks, it's always like, oh, is it a real leak, or is it like the company purposely leaking it, to build up some hype? So the deal with Payback is, it's basically Fast and Furious. Like, that's what it seems to be. I haven't watched Fast and Furious since like the first couple of movies, because I know I've probably, well, I won't say I've seen it all, because now they're like pushing cars out the back of planes and stuff like that. It's just getting totally ridiculous now. But yeah, I know I kind of got over that sort of blockbuster style movie quite a while back. But I know it's still very popular enough to be onto their 7th movie. And now Need for Speed, if they weren't already taking influences from Fast and Furious, they definitely are in this game. There's 3 characters, I believe, and they're supposed to have different styles to them. So how that actually affects gameplay, I don't know, or if it's more just talk. But yeah, they showed a demo of this truck heist. I mean, it seemed kind of interesting, I guess if you want a true racing game, you'd be playing Forza, you'd be playing Gran Turismo, you'd be playing Project Cars or something. If you're playing for Need for Speed, you're after that more action, that more Hollywoodness about it sort of thing. So why not go the full keg, if you will, and just go, all out and introduce heists. So, I mean, I can't say for a fact that I've played many Need for Speed games over the years. I think I've played a little bit here and there, but not much. So, the whole, going around modding your car, winning races sort of thing, that's been around for a while. But I believe this whole heist thing is quite a new concept for it. Now, that's not the only influence that's taken here, and once again, I can't confirm that this hasn't been an influence before, but there's some real Burnout style influence in here, and that's basically, I'm basing that off, they got the slow motion crashes. So, in the demo they did, you saw you smacking out cars, and then they'd go flying off in slow motion, going boom. You know that subwoofer, bass boom that they use on every single Hollywood trailer these days. Like, just everything goes silent, and then it goes boom, and then something explodes or something. You know, the Michael Bay style effect. Well, we've got that in Burnout slow motion replay form. Once again, if you heard another sound, that wasn't a Michael Bay boom. That was my dog sneezing. Now, I don't know. I find I remember playing a bit of Burnout and experiencing that slow motion thing, and I actually found that annoying. Like, I know it was supposed to be a feature, and I think people enjoyed it, and like, it has a novelty to it and that. But I think personally that uh, yeah, that's great a few times in that, but I feel like that just breaks up the gameplay and would kill it after a while. So I'm not sure how enjoyable that will be long term. How often it features in the game, I don't know. But we saw it at least twice in a demo. So if that's happening in just one demo, then you can only imagine, yeah, how often it's going to happen over the game overall. So um, yeah, overall it seems a bit less cheesy than the last Need for Speed. I didn't play the last Need for Speed, but the footage I saw of it and that had a real cheesy vibe to it. You know, we gotta win this race, bro, sort of thing. You know, so um, yeah. I mean, this continues that sort of thing to an extent, and maybe it's going to be even worse. We just haven't seen that yet. But from what I saw, I know the acting, voice acting, and that seemed to be a little bit better. But we probably saw one of the better parts of the game. I'm guessing one of the more exciting parts. So you could maybe get away with that intensity in an intense scene when the characters are trying to be real intense, but it's not actually intense or something like that. Maybe it won't pay off as well. So that's Need for Speed Payback. I must admit, if I was going to play a Need for Speed game, that's probably looks a bit more interesting than other ones. So maybe it might draw in a bit more of a newer crowd, not just car people. It might draw in people that looking a bit for a story in that as well. Not just another rags to riches story sort of thing. So moving on. Now this next game is probably the biggest surprise of all of EA Play's conference. It's called A Way Out. It's from the creators of Brothers. And if you don't remember what Brothers was, it was this sort of indie game that had two brothers, surprisingly. And you had to navigate both of those players with like the thumbsticks of a controller. I never actually played it, but it was an interesting game mechanic and would have been quite a challenging and possibly frustrating game. But at least it was something fresh, And so they've started, I believe, a new company, and it's called Hazelight. And at first, when they announced this game at EA Play, I thought the game was called Hazelight, but it turns out it's actually called A Way Out. What is the game? It's basically Prison Break the game, from what I can tell. But it's okay. That makes it sound not that very original, sort of thing. There was actually a Prison Break game released. I never got to play it. I'm actually a Prison Break fan. I'm actually started watching the new series, which I thought was going to be crap, but I've actually got quite sucked into it. So I'm looking forward to watching all of that. But yeah, there was a Prison Break game many years ago. I think it might have been PS2, PS3 era. But I never played it, and it probably wasn't that good. I think the reviews were pretty bad for it. So yeah, this might be a good Prison Break game, even though it's not officially Prison Break the game. I'm sure it's taken a lot of influence from the Prison Break series. So you play, once again, well, no, I don't know if they are necessarily two brothers, but there's two characters. So once again, it's focusing on two characters, but the difference is you're not controlling one controller and controlling two players. Instead, it's actually a co-op game. And a bit different to probably any other game. I don't know if anyone else has done this before, and this seems to be quite a push on the emphasis of this new game. Is it's going to be split screen, and it can only be played co-op. So, too bad if you don't have any friends. Hopefully, well, I don't know if you could. It does matchmaking. I get the feeling you have to play this with someone else. Now, really, for this to work, I think they're going to have to make the game quite cheap, or you get like a separate code with the game, so you can give it to someone else to play through the game with you. I don't, I don't think it's drop in, drop out from what I can tell. So you can't just like be playing with one person, then someone else drops in. So it's been built to be experienced by two people from start to finish. That is a challenge. That is very challenging to be able to have a game that's going to attract two players to play it all the way from start to finish. That could actually make it quite a niche audience in a way, not because people aren't interested in it, but because, you know, people have busy lives and you know, trying to find a time to keep playing a game like that over a period of time together is going to be challenging, I think. So I think, and I know most people like a game to be long, they want to get their values worth. But if they keep the price right, and I think they would have to, because I imagine this, it looks good. It's not. I don't think it'll be quite, you know, rock star quality, but it's, you know, it's looking pretty decent for an indie studio. I mean, I don't know how many people are working at Hazelight, but to go from Brothers to this, it seems like quite a massive upgrade. They've gone from, you know, like a more indie title to this is like near AAA looking, this game. Well, actually, you possibly could even call it AAA, I'd say. Yeah, so it's quite a jump. But I think it needs an indie price, you know, 20 to 30 Australian dollars. And that way, not only will it mean it's more accessible for getting two players to go, hopefully they do some bundle deals if it's coming out on PC or whatever sort of thing. Hopefully you can buy like a bundle where you get two codes for a little bit cheaper. But yeah, whether it's going to work or not, I don't know. You can play it split screen on a couch, which is their preferred method, so there might be some benefit to that. Or you can also play it online. So if they didn't include the online mode, I think this game would have been destined to be doomed, because once again, trying to get someone over, go, hey, let's keep playing this game, over all the time, it would be challenging. But if you could play it co-op, okay. But as I was mentioning, I think if they keep the price cheap and the length short, and I know people don't like hearing that, but I reckon, you know, maybe 5 to 10 hours max, then it might be doable. I think if it becomes too long, I think they will struggle to get people wanting to play from start to finish with two players. Now, the split screen thing seems to jump around, like, you know, because it's all kind of real time in a way. So while you're playing one character and your friend is playing the other character, it appears, you know, that, well, it doesn't appear, it is, it's happening live action. So one demonstration that shows like one of the characters is just arriving in jail while you're playing the other characters. One of the players is playing the other character, and he's watching the other character come into the jail. So that's all in real time. So yeah, and how you approach the situations will be different depending on your character and each player, sort of thing. So there's different ways, I think, to approach different situations. So I think from that perspective, that sounds really interesting. Whether or not I can find anyone I can convince to play it co-op, I don't know. Once again, I think if the price is right, there's a chance there. And if they pull it off right, it could be something really quite innovative and maybe might really be a game changer as far as people approaching co-op games. I like the concept, but once again, yeah, can I find someone else who's also going to be as excited about the game as I am? I mean, I'm not super excited about it. I mean, it looked good, but I don't know if it looked like amazing. And I don't know if that split screen thing is actually going to become annoying. Like, I've seen the screen split up like that all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think even if you play online, I think even if you play online, I think both players will still be seeing that split screen situation. So, yeah, if that annoys you, you're still going to have to deal with that. So, but it's cool to see a developer doing something like this. and EA is supporting it as part of their sort of indie program. And it's coming out in early next year, so early 2018. So that's A Way Out. And yeah, probably one of our first big unknown announcements to come out, so that's good. Now, another major announcement, some would say a much major than A Way Out, but we didn't get much from it. But we also knew maybe a tiny bit about it already, was a new IP from BioWare. So if you watched my predictions in my last stream, I did mention about a new IP that was coming from BioWare that was potentially going to be announced at this E3, and it has. This is what they're referring to as the Dylan Project in BioWare, which was the Bob Dylan of games, which for Bob Dylan fans, they'll see that as a positive thing. For non-Bob Dylan fans, they might see that as not as positive thing. But the idea was that it was supposed to be, the best game ever. Like as if, I guess, Casey Hudson, the former director of this game, and former director of Mass Effect, I'm guessing is a massive Bob Dylan fan. So yeah, clearly he wanted to make a game that was as good and something that he was passionate about as he was about Bob Dylan. Yeah, that's where the Bob Dylan references, I think, end, unless it's included in the soundtrack. I doubt it, because the style of game doesn't feel very Bob Dylan-like. It's this action adventure live service game that I've been talking about. We didn't actually really get a sense of that in what we were shown. All we were shown was a little short, like I think 45-second teaser. I have watched it twice before doing the stream, because I wanted, this is the biggest announcement in many ways. I wanted to make sure if there was any details I missed there, but there wasn't much. And the reason for that is the full gameplay demonstration is going to be done tomorrow at the Microsoft Xbox E3 conference. I think this is going to be the showcase piece for the Scorpio in many ways. I was talking about that in predictions. Xbox really needs a showcase for the Scorpio to really help sell it. Whether or not it's exclusive to Xbox One and Scorpio and maybe PC, I don't know yet. We don't know yet, but hopefully not. So I guess from the looks of it, it's looking like it definitely supports 4K, obviously. According to the trailer, it kind of said, it says 4K not available on all platforms. So that makes me wonder if it is coming out multi-platform, all things. So PC, yes, would be able to do 4K. Scorpio would be able to do 4K. PS4 Pro would be able to do 4K or close to it. But if it is coming out on just standard PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, then obviously that won't be in 4K. So maybe it's coming out on all those consoles. You'd want to think so if it was such a big title. Now, just want to give a shout out to Skulls2001. Thanks for joining the chat. Thanks for saying hi. Let me know if you watched the EA Play conference. Let me know what you think of the announcements that have been made so far. And otherwise, yeah, keep tuning in and let us know what you think of what we're talking about. Now, what we're talking about right now is the new IP from BioWare, and it's called Anthem, which is very Destiny-like, isn't it? It's a single word sort of name, and that's not where the similarities seem to end. We did mention that it's a live service game before, which is very Destiny, obviously, and what little we saw of the teaser that was shown today did feel very much like Destiny, maybe with a bit of Titanfall influence in there. At first, because I saw this big, sort of mech-looking sort of suit thing at first, but then I realized once you saw a character next to it that was actually more like an exosuit. So it's not some big Titanfall mech; it's just an exosuit. So it gave me some Titanfall vibes. It also gave me a bit of Mass Effect vibes, which shouldn't be surprising seeing it's a BioWare game. What it actually is going to be. Is it going to be a Destiny clone, or is it actually going to be an action adventure RPG more like Mass Effect? Or is it going to be a combination of both? I think it could be more a combination of both. Maybe there's a single player campaign as well as a whole multiplayer thing, and maybe that's how it'll differ from Destiny. And if anyone can pull that off, it'll probably be Bioware, and that might explain, why Mass Effect Andromeda hasn't hit as well as we would have thought it would, because maybe a lot of resources have been put into this game instead, Anthem. So there's something about a wall. They mentioned like separating us from what lies above. It's very Trump-esque in a way, sort of thing. Build a wall. We did see some sort of alien-like monster sort of thing out in this jungle above, like beyond the wall. So whether it's a sort of player versus environment scenario, or if it's actually PvP instead, we don't quite know yet. But we'll find out more, and we'll see actual gameplay, not just some sort of CG trailer, tomorrow at the Microsoft conference. So make sure you tune into my wrap-up of the Microsoft conference tomorrow, and we'll no doubt have some real details on Anthem, and whether it's going to be a game that can compete with something like Destiny, if it is trying to. Destiny's already probably grabbed that crowd quite a bit, and Destiny 2 is coming out soon, even though it doesn't look that much different to Destiny 1. Yeah. I don't know if it attracts me yet. From what little we saw, I kind of thought, looks a bit generic to me, sort of thing. But then so does Destiny to me. I played Destiny the beta for 8 hours. Then I had to replay it all when I bought the game. And then that's where I kind of stopped. I kind of replayed the same content again. And then I got over it by then. I was bored of it by then. Which was probably a good thing I gave up at that point, because the whole point of Destiny is grinding and playing the same content over and over. So clearly I wasn't the right player for that. But maybe Bioware can take that formula and make it more interesting, more varied, and more approachable for people that maybe are used to Mass Effect and Dragon Age sort of games. Make it more RPG orientated, rather than pretty much FPS game that has MMO elements, which is what Destiny's about. So yeah, let's find out tomorrow what that's more about. Now back to sports ball. We did also have NBA Live 18 announced. I believe it took off a year last year, and now it's actually finally back. Not much shown, I guess, in a way of it. There was some fancy replay system they were showing, but I didn't really get the point of it. I don't know if it was like to make your own sort of videos out of it more so, because they seem to be able to customize what was happening in it. So it didn't seem like it was something to do with while you're playing, then the action replay happens and you can do different things, because instead of just changing camera modes, it was actually allowing you to pull different moves, so like between legs and all that sort of thing. That's what they seem to be emphasizing. So I'm guessing it's almost like a video mode where you can kind of set up your own virtual plays, but the AI will react to whatever you're doing in that. So it's, I guess, realistic and not just a bunch of people just standing around holding their hands up. I guess that could be interesting to people that want to make their own little virtual basketball videos, maybe, if that's the case. But I don't know if that's really going to be a feature seller, you mean like a game seller. I guess I don't know if that's something that differentiates itself from 2K's basketball games. Obviously, they desperately need something that's going to make them stand out from 2K. Otherwise, they've got a long way to go till they can start competing with 2K again. There is a career mode called The One. I thought it was going to be similar to the Journey and the long shot sort of RPG modes, but I don't, from what I saw, I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is that same sort of mode. Yeah, it's there. It's introducing a street mode, so which I think makes things more interesting. I like the idea of having a street mode as well, and it'll include real-world courts such as Venice Beach, which is a personal favourite of mine. I may be from Australia, but I have been to LA, and I did get to play some basketball on Venice Beach court. And why did I do that? White Man Can't Jump. That shows my age. You probably don't know the movie if you're watching this, from the 90s, classic street ball basketball movie. Check it out if you haven't. The Venice Beach basketball court actually features quite prominently in that movie. Well, actually, does it? Because I did read somewhere that while the I guess, fictional storyline was based on the Venice Beach basketball court. I did read somewhere that it might not have actually been that actual court. They might have used somewhere else, um, which might be understandable. Trying to shoot a film there would have been quite challenging if that was the case. Still, I wanted to relive my own White Man Can't Jump moment, so I did go there when I was down that way a few years back, and I did manage to get a half court shot on there. On that court, and there was this dude sitting on the side watching, and he was just like, he saw me missing all these shots, which interestingly, I feel was affected by the wind, which is a reference once again to White Man Can't Jump. But then finally, I just took this half court shot and I got it in, and the guy that was just sitting down on the sort of sidelines, minding his own business, just went, oh! So that was a very White Man Can't Jump sort of moment. And yeah, so there could be some White Man Can't Jump moments in the one career mode in street mode. So, and the kind of cool thing I saw was the unlockable. So you earn things and you can unlock things like Jordan's shoes. Like I saw Nike Air Jordan 8's being unlocked in the demo that they were showing. So that kind of sounds interesting. In other games like cars and that, unlock a new wheel or something like that. Now in basketball games, you can unlock new shoes. Like I don't know if that's a feature on any other games, but that seemed like something a bit new and fresh. And they've clearly got the licenses for those specific shoes, so that's interesting. Now, I guess there wasn't much else shown or told about NBA Live other than that there's going to be a free demo in August, and anything you do in that demo will progress into the game. So, if there's a free demo, I'm willing to give that a go. I'm willing to try it out. I've only got one basketball game, and that was the Jordan edition of 2K, NBA 2K. I think it was like 2012, 2014 or something like that. I played that for a little bit, but I feel like there need to be like an arcade mode. It's very much a simulation, and I very much sucked in it, so I stopped playing that soon after. But hey, maybe I'll give this a go. I wouldn't mind playing some street ball, so I might try it at the demo. Then it was pretty much Star Wars land, basically. Like, we were just talking about Star Wars, but not to what we predicted, unfortunately. I did mention that there was a couple of other Star Wars games which were briefly mentioned at last year's E3. EA has in development. But that didn't seem to come to fruition to seeing anything of it at the EA Play conference this year. That's not to say it won't be in one of the other conferences. Maybe one of the big console makers have actually grabbed one of these games as a demo game. But we didn't see the Amy Hennig Visceral Games Star Wars game, which looks like it's going to be like the Star Wars version of Uncharted or something. So we didn't see or hear anything about that. And we also didn't see the game from Respawn, the makers of Titanfall, which is supposed to be a Star Wars game as well. So that was disappointing, but hopefully we hear something about those games in the rest of E3. I mean, we haven't actually even started E3 technically yet. This is just a pre-conference that's been done by Electronic Arts. But we did, of course, see about Battlefront 2, which we've already seen quite a bit from Battlefront 2. We've seen like information about the single player campaign that's been introduced. They really pushed how much they took the feedback from the players, that everyone complained that there was no single player campaign. Perhaps that should have been obvious from the start, but I feel like Battlefront, the first one, or this new, I guess, reboot of it all, was almost like a practice run for Battlefront 2. Like, they got the multiplayer probably mostly right, I'm guessing. But this time around, it looks like they've taken a lot of feedback in, and this will be quite worth playing, I think. I tried Battlefront, the original one, the beta, for quite a while. I also bought it recently for the X-Wing VR mission, but I haven't actually played much of the game because I don't know, it just didn't seem to grab me, the whole just multiplayer only thing. Now it's got a single player campaign. That's going to be interesting. That might suck me in, even if I don't get into multiplayer. And I think that's what's good about it, is if you're not really a multiplayer person, you can play the single player campaign and vice versa, or you can play both. But they did try and focus more so on the multiplayer now for this demo. They did some massive demos of the multiplayer, and this Battlefront 2 bridges the gap between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens. And has 3 times the content, they reckon. More heroes, more planets, more everything, basically. And it's from all eras of Star Wars. Um, they've introduced a new class system, and there's these things called battle points that can be earned in the game. My concern with that is, does that mean in-app purchases? We don't know. They didn't mention anything of that conveniently. But to give EA credit, what they did mention was that the season pass is kind of still a thing, even though you can't purchase it. And the reason you can't purchase it is because all DLC will be free. This was a common complaint, supposedly, from the community, that people were kind of getting left behind because they didn't buy the DLC. So, this community got really split. And I think, from what I used to hear, was that it was hard to find people actually playing Battlefront, partly because they would have been split up. And in smaller countries like Australia, for example, if there was a specific server for that, that would have meant, like, if you were splitting us already a small audience into smaller sections of, like, whoever decided to pony up the extra money to get the DLC, that would have made things harder. And if Battlefront's going to be successful, especially on the multiplayer side, they need to make sure that the players can all play the same thing, so that there is a big audience and you're always going to be able to jump into a game. So yeah, good on them. EA have actually finally been nice, and actually they're giving DLC for free. Now, if you really strip it back to the old days, you kind of can think, well, that's just content that they didn't introduce in the first place. But when it's free, who cares? Like, in ways, it's probably more exciting, okay? You get your original game, you get excited about that content and that, but then every 3 or 6 months you get new content, and it keeps you excited about a game, keeps you wanting to come back to it. And if it's not costing you anything, then, that's good. And that will also, I think, continue ongoing sales for EA. Games quickly go into the bargain bin once people get over them, like after that first little fad period often. So continuing to provide new content for games for free is a good way to keep selling, original copies, not just trying to keep rorting money out of the existing player base. So that means you're continually growing the base, and then that, of course, the bigger the base is, like, the more likely people are going to continue to play it, because there's more people to play with. So could this be a sign of the rorting of players being over? That's something I've written down. We have had Ubisoft in recent times make moves to say, hey, we're not going to be doing paid DLC anymore. I don't know how much that's come to fruition yet. I haven't really followed that side of things for much. But if Ubisoft and EA are moving towards not doing this whole paid DLC thing, maybe finally we're going to get back to getting complete games from the start, or at least this scenario where DLC is going to be free, and you're not going to feel like, hey, I paid full price retail for this game, but to actually get the full game, I've got to keep paying more money on that. Like, that was always an anti-player sort of method, and I think people have been very cynical over that over the past few years, and people really try to cash into it. If you make a freemium game, if you make a free game and you're going to charge for DLC and stuff like that, whether it's cosmetic or pay to win stuff, then so be it, I guess. The player hasn't invested in something in the first place, and they can choose whether or not they want to do that. But if you're asking someone to pay full price for a game, and then later on going, hey, but we want some more money if you want to play this little bit of extra content or whatever, then that was always, like, I think, a bad policy. And I know it costs money to develop these extra content, but then, as again, once I said before, like, is it just a fact that there was definitely, at some point, some games felt like they'd actually purposely been chopped into pieces so that they could sell DLC after the game. Like, you could call that a conspiracy theory if you want, but it definitely seemed like that was the case with quite a few games out there in recent years. And that really created a negative connotation with some developers, and in particular publishers, which are often, I imagine, the ones pushing it. It's rarely actually the developers themselves. They're the ones that are really passionate about a game. They're spending years working on a game, and the last thing they want to do is give, like, the players, like, 3/4 of a game. They don't want to do something that's going to make their player base go, oh, I hate these guys. They're trying to just use this as a cash cow to get more money out of us. So I think you'll really find it's the actual developer that's pushing that sort of thing. I think in most cases it'll be like, working on a game, and then the publisher knocks on the door, go, hey, we want to keep making more money out of this after we made the first, initial original game being released. So can you rip out, like a whole level out of it, and then we'll sell that later on for an extra $10, or make it a DLC content thing or exclusive thing on one particular console and that. So I guess when there's all that internet rage and hate for those sort of scenarios, I think you should more so look at the publisher than the actual developer themselves, because I imagine most times they probably had no say in it and they had to just roll with it. But it's good to see now the major publishers, Ubisoft and EA, are moving away from that technique, and hopefully paid DLC will be more a thing of the past, hopefully. And, there's nothing wrong with proper expansions, one you could refer to that people raved on about was the Witcher 3 DLCs. They were proper old school style expansions, like back in the 90s or whatever. You'd get actual boxed expansions, that were a whole new game, So say Witcher 3 was, say, I don't know, 50 hours worth of gameplay. If you get a whole new 20 hours campaign, then, that is worth paying some money for. But if you're just getting, an extra couple of hours of gameplay with a tiny tidbit of new narrative or a new character or something like that, those are really things, if you want to keep that good relationship going, should be just included, and not punishing the players that support you, especially the ones that pay for it on retail. Otherwise, you're going to just get people that are constantly going to keep waiting for Game of the Year editions. Like, unless they're really passionate about the game, they go, oh, I'll just wait 6 months, 12 months till it's cheap, or the DLC are on special, or they release a Game of the Year edition, which is going to be half the retail price, and it's going to include all DC. I mean, people kind of refer to that as the complete game these days, getting a Game of the Year edition. So thinking how much money could be lost in that respect, if in Australian dollars, if you're talking about a retail game for, say, even $70, but more likely $80 on launch, and then you're trying to ask players to pay like an extra maybe $20, $30 in DLC with a season pass or something on top of that, how much are you gaining out of that versus the amount of players they're going to wait till there's like a $40 or $50 Game of the Year edition that includes all that, and you lost all that money at the start from people that would have bought it on launch if it hadn't included the full game or had free DLC like Battlefront 2 is going to have. So that is good news, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come. And that also gets me a bit more excited about Battlefront 2. Maybe, once again, maybe it will draw me in. Maybe I'll get it on launch. I don't know. We'll see. I definitely would like to play a beta of it first and see if it gets me into it or not. I don't think a beta was mentioned for this, but oh yeah, I think it's only if you pre-order, which technically I think you can pre-order and then cancel and still get a beta. I find that a bit dodgy, but I try not to do something like that. But yeah, it would be good if there was a all access public beta, if possible. Now, what they did show in the multiplayer demo was a map called Assault on Theed, and they have these different phases. I don't know if this was really in... I don't think this was in the previous Battlefront, but it seemed to be 3 phases and different exchange, and you earn battle points going through the game, and then you can unlock things like vehicles, I believe, and maybe characters in that. Because they mentioned on the demo that... before you had to find things on the playing field to be able to get like a one of the spaceships or something to fly around in and that. But this, you actually earn points based off, I think, your gameplay, and then if you're doing well, I guess enough, you can decide to purchase a ship that you can use. Now, I don't know if that's like something you permanently have and you continue on in each game, or if it's kind of like more like a MOBA setup where you earn coins kind of in the game that you're playing at that time, and then you go buy stuff from a in-game store during that match to then use in that. I think that's the way to go on, and that's an interesting thing to kind of bring that sort of MOBA sort of game mechanic of buying stuff as you go along to use in the game. And hopefully that means more people can fly around spaceships. I remember the little bit of Battlefront playing I did. I don't think I even managed to get into a ship. It was too hard for me to find it. So to me, that's one of the more exciting parts. Being able to fly around doing pew-pews in spaceships is more exciting to me than being on the ground going around with another gun thing. Because, that's a bit different to other FPS stuff, I know other FPS have vehicles in them as well, but yeah, it's Star Wars. Star Wars vehicles are a bit more exciting than your average sort of FPS vehicle scenario. So, yeah, so there was a major focus on multiplayer, but that was basically it for the Star Wars Battlefront demo and EA Play in general. That was all that was announced. So we did mention in the predictions that EA supposedly don't really do surprises at these conferences. Now, I would class A Way Out as a bit of a surprise. That was quite a new concept, I feel. And Anthem, people knew something was coming, and it wasn't really a surprise in respect of EA showing a tiny bit of it, but I think the real surprise will be tomorrow at the Microsoft conference, seeing what the actual game is, because we don't know much other than a bunch of people going, looking in this futuristic sort of world that things look bad for us and that usual jazz drama stuff. So that's it for the EA Play stream for today. For Zcraze, there is nothing else on for this day because it actually isn't E3 hasn't actually started yet. This was EA doing a pre-E3 conference. So next up will be in about 24 hours time. Is 3 conferences we'll be covering. So we have, and I'm going to double check on those times. Not that I would have gotten up earlier for EA Play anyway. It was already quite a bad time for me as it is in my time. The conference was like 5 a.m. I thought originally. So that's already quite an early start for me. But it's hopefully a better time wherever you are watching this from. But yeah, tomorrow, so that's Monday, June 12th for Australian Western Standard Time. And all these times will be Australian Western Standard Time. I'll be doing a stream at 7 a.m. roughly for Microsoft's conference. Now, these are approximate times because I don't know exactly what time the actual conferences will finish. But I did actually watch all the conference for this today a bit earlier, but I decided to stick to those times to make it a bit easier for people to keep track of that. So 7 a.m. I'm aiming for a wrap-up of the Microsoft conference, and obviously that's going to be all about Scorpio and hopefully some new stuff we haven't heard of before, and obviously the full proper gameplay reveal of BioWare's new game, Anthem. So that shall be a huge one, and it should be the biggest conference of all E3. I can't see what could compete with that. Then at 12 p.m. I'll be doing a wrap-up of Bethesda's conference. Now, they could bring out a curveball and announce a completely new game, and there is some potential for that to happen. We have talked about Starfield in the predictions, that that could be a game that's rumored to come out that's going to combine the worlds of Elder Scrolls and not Mass Effect, Fallout, which is a kind of crazy, interesting concept. And yeah, we'll see. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves there. Whether or not that's going to end up being true or not is another thing. So that'll be at 12 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time. I'll be doing a wrap-up of that. And yeah, then finally we have Devolver Digital, which is Devolver Digital is an indie publisher of many cult indie classic games. And yeah, for the first time ever, instead of just having the little caravans they have across the road from E3, they're actually doing a press conference. To me, I would hope that hints at some pretty huge announcements, but whether or not it is, or if it's just a fact that they've realized, hey, we've got so many games coming out, we might as well do a conference now, and also really push indie into that sort of AAA arena where you normally only hear about the big titles, and instead of maybe trying to beg for a time on one of the console conferences or something like that. Maybe Devolver said, well, let's just do this our way. Let's do it in our style, without the whole awkward corporate style moments that we often see in things like EA Play and other conferences. Yeah, maybe this is E3 conference indie style, so it might be straight like all the other conferences, or it might be, you know, very Devolver in style. So that'll be interesting to see, and especially I'm really hoping for a Sometimes Always Monsters release date, and hopefully some new interesting indie games that we haven't had announced yet. They've got plenty of games coming out this year, but you know, I'm sure Devolver are always looking for new games to be publishing. So I'm sure we'll get a few new announcements, whether they'll be big enough that you think, oh, that's why they called a conference for, or whether it'll just be just, you know, new little indie titles that might be surprise hits for this year or next year. We'll have to wait and see. But I'll be doing that Devolver wrap up stream probably about 3 p.m. I reckon a Devolver conference will be a bit shorter. I think it'll only be about 1 hour long or so rather than 2 hours. I doubt they have the content for that. So I might start streaming that a bit earlier. But I'll try as much as possible stick to these streaming times I've mentioned. I know it's good to get the jump and on it all and be, you know, one of the first people to get the news out. But, you know, there's so many news sources out there you can get your information from. I feel if you're watching this stream, it's not necessarily because you're getting the information first, even though this is very current and straight after the conferences. But I think hopefully you're watching because maybe I'm presenting a different take on these games and an opinion on it rather than just straight news and so forth. So, yeah, so probably I'll stick to those times. 7 a.m. for Australian Western Standard Time for Microsoft conference wrap up tomorrow, Monday. Bethesda at 12 p.m. and Devolver at 3 p.m. And then later in the week, we've got PC Gaming Show, Ubisoft, Sony, and Nintendo. So, once again, as I mentioned previously, on my profile, on the ZCraze profile, you can see there is a schedule I've put up there, a tentative schedule. So keep an eye on that. If you want to try and check in to see when the wrap up is happening for those. And yeah, also, if you want to get notifications of when those wrap-ups for those conferences are going to be, for sure, like obviously I've given you a guide on when I'm going to be doing those next wrap-ups, like the Microsoft, Bethesda, and Devolver ones I'll be doing tomorrow. Then, yeah, another good way is to follow this channel, this Twitch channel, the twitch.tv/ZCraze, the one you're looking at right now if you're watching this most likely. Follow that and you'll get a notification when I go live for those next wrap-ups tomorrow. You can also follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/ZCraze. I normally give at least a sort of 10 to 15 minute warning on when I'm about to go live. And also facebook.com/ZCraze is another way you can follow and keep an eye on what time I am going to go ahead with those streams. But I probably will try and stick to those times that I've listed on the profile. So once again, Microsoft conference wrap up tomorrow from 7 a.m. Australian Western Standard Time. 12 p.m. for Bethesda and 3 p.m. for Devolver Digital. And then, of course, we've got PC Gaming Show, Ubisoft, and Sony and Nintendo to come in the coming days after that. So I hope you enjoyed this wrap up. It's a bit different to what I previously do, which is normally I've past couple of years been writing up sort of articles on wrap ups on this, and I might still do that on zcraze.com, my website. I do have a news and reviews section which you can check out. Currently has a review of Little Nightmares on there, and also a wrap up of Apple's recent WWDC event. So after all the E3 is said and done, I might do a wrap up of all the highlights overall, because there's not just the conferences, you know, there's plenty of indie devs that are going to be on the showroom floor that are going to make announcements of new games, no doubt, that we might not actually hear about through these conferences. So there could be a few things I don't talk about in these wrap-ups that could be worth mentioning in written form. But yeah, I'm trying out this format of doing these wrap-ups of the conferences after they happen and give a reaction, I guess. Call it a reaction video if you will, not a live reaction, but definitely my initial thoughts of what little information we get out of these things. Usually, you know, there's some more information drip fed over the coming days with very different developer interviews and such. But yeah, these were my initial reactions, and I think overall EA Play was not bad. I think it was an improvement over last year's one. It was a little less awkward. I think if I had to pick a winner out of that, I'd probably say A Way Out. It's quite an innovative concept, the whole co-op game breaking out of prison, and it doesn't look like it's only going to be based in prison. It's not going to be just, hey, how do we get out of this prison? It looks like there's maybe an outside the prison sort of section as well. So that'll be interesting. If there's like a whole getaway thing, you got to stay out of the way of like cops trying to catch you again and that. So it's an interesting concept. Whether it will work, we'll have to see, and we won't find out until next year, in 2018, early 2018. But I think that was the highlight in many ways for the EA Play conference for me. Of course, Anthem could end up being the highlight, the new game from BioWare, but we don't know anything really about it at this stage. So until the Microsoft conference, I can't really say whether Anthem is something I'm looking forward to yet. Currently, my first impression is I'm not. Yeah, we've seen nothing. We've basically seen nothing. It's, a little CG teaser that shows absolutely nothing. So when we see some gameplay tomorrow at the Microsoft conference, I'll be able to form an opinion of like whether this is going to be something worth playing. From my perspective, of course, my opinion is going to be different to yours, especially if you're maybe a Destiny player, and that's what direction this game seems to be going, this Anthem game. So yeah, we'll see tomorrow, and maybe we'll get a release date, maybe. But seeing it did mention on trailer pre-alpha footage, that could mean that we could be quite far away still. Pre-alpha is, a term that's basically saying it's still probably, I'd say, at least a year or two away. So I don't think it's coming out. I don't think Anthem's coming out this year, though they probably should be, if they're going to compete with Destiny, because Destiny 2 is coming out this year. So, and maybe that's why Destiny 2 is coming out this year. Maybe they're rushing it out because they know this game's coming and they've got to get in early. Anthem, I reckon, probably not going to come out till at least next year, maybe even 2019. And I think this... But if they're showing gameplay already, maybe... I don't know, maybe it isn't that far away. Who knows? We'll see. I mean, Mass Effect did come out this year, so I wouldn't think they'd be releasing Anthem in the same year as Mass Effect, even though they've put a Mass Effect on ice now. So I reckon it's more of a 2018 game, but we'll possibly find out tomorrow. And it definitely won't be coming out before Scorpio, I don't think, because it's going to be during the Microsoft conference, the Anthem gameplay footage. That says to me that's coming out when Scorpio comes out or sometime after Scorpio, because clearly that seems to be the feature platform for it, unless of course it's coming out on PC as well. And I don't think Scorpio will be coming out until probably October, November, I reckon, in a lead up to Christmas. So I don't think we'll be seeing Anthem before then. And yeah, whether we'll even Scorpio or if it'll be more of a next year thing, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Scorpio really does need a game to sell it, and maybe Anthem could be it. Maybe Forza 7 could be it. Maybe it could be various other games that we don't even know about yet. But I just don't think Anthem seems like it's going to be something that's going to come out this year. But we'll find out more tomorrow. Even if it's not told a release date tomorrow at the Microsoft conference for Anthem, we may get some hints as to when we should be expecting it. And yeah, we'll see from there. So that's it pretty much for the zCraze EA Play wrap-up stream for E3. I hope you enjoyed it. As I mentioned, follow on all the various channels, this Twitch channel, Twitter, or Facebook to get the latest notifications and when I'm going to be doing the other wrap-ups. I have got the timeline on my profile, so make sure you check that. And yeah, overall, I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, EA, they done all right. Nothing that's really made me jump out of my pants exactly yet. But there's plenty more conferences to come. No doubt Bethesda and Sony conferences will have something that gets me excited. And maybe even Devolver Digital might have something that gets me excited as well. That's for me personally, because those are more the formats, more the platforms that I'm interested in personally. But yeah, we'll see. It's a long week ahead, and there's a lot more streams to come. So I hope you enjoy it. And until next time, check ya.